Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly fix of 10 minutes of ancient warfare related material. What I do here is I attempt to answer a question from a reader, viewer, or listener. You can ask a question however you would like. You can send me an email, awa at caravansaripublishers.com.au or awa at ancientwarfare.com. You can or Murray at caravansaripublishers.com. That'll get to me as well. You can send me a postcard, PO Box 222 Belfield, Belfield, NSW 2191 Australia. That will get to me. You can respond to a previous podcast or video and I'll get the question. And this one is a response to a previous answer. This is from Ralph, and this was when I was talking about chariots. Ralph says, "Hi, great analysis of Alexander's chariot problem. Thank you. The problem was, as a war game, is that 150 chariots are only 8 figures using the normal 1:20 ratio, although to increase their effectiveness, this is often changed to 1:8 because of the size of the units. Regarding using the chariots against the lighter troops, these would possibly bring down the horses with arrows and bows, whilst skipping out of the path of the horses and the scythed chariot. A better target would be cavalry, particularly the heavy cavalry, but this is not described anywhere I know of, nor I. Rather than countermarching or locked shield, caltrops are the answer, as used by the Romans later. However, make sure your infantry have caligae. Nonetheless, a good bang on your shield will certainly help. A charging horse will ride into noisy formed infantry. I have done it into 3 ranks of ordered musket infantry who fired blanks at about 5 meters out. Interesting. My horse would never do it again, however, even though I could still fire from horseback afterwards, so not noise shy. I don't know whether that requires the horses to be trained for noise, for combat noise. I remember watching something about Napoleonic horses being trained to deal with noise. And I actually have an anecdote from opera. We were doing an outdoor Carmen in New Zealand in the 90s, and the star of the show was the procession before the bullfight at the end of the opera. And we had the very famous New Zealand rider who had won Olympic golds at multiple Olympics. And of course, we had the chorus on stage and we'd practiced. It was on a rugby field where we were performing it. But the horses hadn't been prepared for the noise of 15,000 people in the audience cheering, and the horse bolted. And so Mark Todd, the Olympian, really brought the horse under control. And it was amazing because when he brought the horse under control, it reared. And of course, the audience didn't realize that this was not scripted. This was not planned. But if you were close to the horse, like we were, doing the singing, this horse just went, and it was like that wasn't what we rehearsed. And he brought the horse under control really quickly. But I think the horses do need to be taught to deal with noise, especially unexpected noise. So perhaps the Persian chariot horses weren't accustomed to the Greek banging of shields and yelling. Who knows? Anyway, so prolonged shield banging could. Locked shield, probably not so good. Countermarching if you can do it, but caligae and caltrops best. Of course, the problem with caltrops is that you can't use the land after, even with caligae. So if you sow caltrops, that land is like a minefield now. You can't go forward into it. So if you're intending to march into the land where the chariots have come against you, caligae means that you've essentially nullified that and you can't go there. So as long as you're willing to write that passage off, you could do it, but otherwise no. Finally, a question. Do you have any sources that describe chariot driver actually exiting the chariot before contact, or is this a modern interpretation? Okay, well, I've armed myself with the Iliad and all the purple, or is it light pink? Who can say? References are in the top here. Now, there are several aspects of this, and I have done work on it. Oh, I prepared something earlier. Apologies to those of you listening. I'm showing up a photo of a pot in the video. That is a pot in the AWA Museum, and the famous depiction on it is of what seems to be a conjoined twin mounting or dismounting a chariot whilst the other twin is being attacked. Now, so I wrote about that. And of course, as part of that writing, it was exploring references to chariot combat in the Iliad. So there are several references to chariot combat in the Iliad where someone leaps out of the chariot to go into combat, or where someone is attacked as they exit their chariot. Now, your question is about chariot drivers. So there's a really interesting thing there, because, of course, in most of the Iliad, there is a driver and then a warrior, and that pairing continues all the way through until well after the period when chariots exist in Greek warfare. At the Battle of Delium, according to Diodorus, the front rank of the Theban army are called the charioteers and warriors. So that pairing continues. Now, when you come to the references in the Iliad, it's not necessarily the driver, but it is one of the two. Normally the warrior is the one that they focus on. And it's not necessarily before contact. So it's very hard to differentiate. Let me read some passages from the Iliad to you. The Loeb translation by A.T. Murray. Very nice surname. So we get the Prince Alexander, and forthwith he leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground. So that seems to be exactly the kind of thing you're talking about. But of course, he's the warrior, not the driver. That was book 3, line 28 to 29. Here's book 4, and this is Diomedes. He spoke and leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground, and terribly rang the bronze upon the breast of the prince as he moved. Thereat might terror have seized even one that was steadfast of heart. Then book 5, this is Idomeneus. Even as he was mounting his chariot, Idomeneus feigned for his spears, pierced with a thrust his long spear through the right shoulder as he fell from his car. So he attacks him as he's mounting his chariot, which implies that he dismounted his chariot to fight. Book 5, line 297, Aeneas leapt down with shield and long spear from his chariot. Book 5, line 494, this is Hector. Forthwith he leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground, and brandishing his 2 sharp spears went everywhere throughout the host, urging men to fight, and roused the dread din of battle. They rallied and took their stand with their faces towards the Achaeans. Then book 6, line 103. This is Hector again. Forthwith he leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground, and brandishing his... Oh, wait, it's exactly the same line, which happens multiple times in the Iliad. Jumping forward, we've got Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, leader of the Lycians, made a cast of his spear at Iphinus, the son of Dexios, as he sprang from his car, as he sprang upon his car behind his swift mares. In that case, it does seem as though the driver and the warrior is a one-person troop rather than 2. All right, I'm going through all the Iliad references here. This is all of them. Next, in book 11, we've got Oileus, who leapt verily down from his chariot and stood and faced him. But even as he rushed straight upon him, the king, this is Agamemnon, smote him on the forehead with his sharp spear. So again, in that case, you've got Oileus is the driver of the horses. So in that sense, driver actually exiting the chariot before his contact. Yes, Oileus. Book 11, Iliad, line 94 to 96. There you go. All right, more from book 11. Hector leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground, brandishing 2 spears. That's 3 of exactly the same for Hector. And then book 11, this is Odysseus, who he stabs Thuon, and then Chersodamus as he leapt down from his car and stabbed him in the navel beneath the shield. So that's those references. They slow down after the first 12 books. There's less in the second half of the Iliad, but this is book 13. And this one is, and again, Hector, but only the first part of that same line. Hector forthwith leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground. Doesn't brandish his 2 spears, he speaks instead in that case. Then book 16, Meriones with the stripped steeds overtook Acamas and thrust and smote him even as he was mounting his car. So again, attacks him as he gets back into his car. And then we've got Hector. Is it Hector? I think it's Hector again. No, Sarpedon. Sarpedon says he leapt in his armor from his chariot to the ground, and Patroclus over against him. He beheld him and sprang from his chariot. So you've got two warriors springing from their chariot into combat. Then again, you've got Patroclus leapt from his chariot with his spear in his left hand. Interestingly, a nice one for left-handed people. Again, in book 16, Hector leaps from his chariot to the ground. And then, where are we? Two more. Book 17, you've got Automedon leaping down from his chariot. And the last one in the Iliad, all the references just outside of 10 minutes. Hippodamus leapt down from his car and fled from the spear thrust of Demoleon. So there you go. So yes, there are, but they're very brief, and there's not that many of them in terms of combat in the Iliad. So there are leaping down to go into combat. There's about 3 of those. And if you count the Hector ones, it doubles, but they're all the same line. If you're attacking someone who's leapt down, there's several of those. And then there's several of the being attacked as you leap. So I hope that answers your question, Ralph. Yes, there is. And there's not many others other than the Iliad. There might be something in Tyrtaeus, or there might be something in Hesiod, but I think those are pretty much it. So I hope that covers that one. Join me again for another Ancient Warfare answer. Thank you. Bye.